Sisters of the Scituate Light. Scituate Light was a welcome sight to sailors at sea. 25 feet high with 8 equal sides, it towered over the rocky shoreline south of Boston. The light was a warning as well. Don't get too close, it reminded the ships sailing by. Dangerous winds and currents are lying in wait. Rebecca and Abby Bates knew all about these things. Their father, Simeon, was the lighthouse keeper, and they lived right next door in a house with 3 rooms and 3 fireplaces to match. When they were younger, their father had told them stories of ships running aground or sinking in terrible storms. They had marked every word, especially when the wind was howling and the waves tumbled over the rocks. Running a lighthouse wasn't easy, and all of the Bates family helped out. They trimmed the wicks and the lamps, wiped soot off the lanterns, and polished the brass fittings. The chores went on, and when they were done, it was time to start over. After dark, the lighthouse lamps had to be refilled with whale oil several times a night. No matter how hot or cold or nasty the weather got, the light must never go out. But not only American ships used Scituate Light. It was September of 1814, and the United States was at war with England. The British Navy was the greatest in the world, and its ships harried the American coast at will. Only weeks earlier, the British fleet had attacked Washington City, and its soldiers had set fire to the White House. Later that month, Simeon Bates took most of his family away on a short trip, but he didn't leave the lighthouse deserted. He asked Rebecca and Abby to stay behind and keep watch. His daughters kept busy cooking and cleaning. Their most important job, though, was looking out for ships in distress. But the closest vessel, a British warship, was actually looking for trouble. Two months before, it had raided Scituate Harbor, taking supplies and burning a few boats. The townspeople had not dared to protest. Anyone who interfered would have been killed at once. Now the warship had returned. Their barges had been lowered and launched toward shore. The beach was empty. No alarm had been raised. The British Marines smiled grimly. Clearly, they had caught the Americans napping again. But Abby was awake. She had been looking out over the water. Now she ran to find her sister. "What shall we do?" she cried out to Rebecca. She knew the British were up to no good. "Here are their barges coming again, and they'll burn up our vessels just as they did afore." There was no time to warn anyone. The girls could flee to safety, but that would leave the town exposed. "We cannot stand idly by," said Rebecca. "We must do something." But what chance did they have against trained soldiers? Suddenly, Rebecca had an idea. "You get the old drum up in the garret," she told her sister, "and I'll play my fife." Abby looked confused. The drum? She didn't know how to play the drum. "All you've got to do is call the roll," Rebecca explained. Abby didn't see how that would help, but there was no time for questions. The British boats had almost reached shore when their officer motioned for silence. The sailors shipped their oars. Was that music they heard? The sound of a fife and drum drifted toward them from beyond a grove of trees. The tune was familiar. It was that silly colonial song, Yankee Doodle. Confound those Americans. Someone must have seen them. The fife and drum meant soldiers were coming. It could be a regiment or even a battalion. But there were no American soldiers marching behind the trees. Only Rebecca and Abby playing as loud as possible. Abby wanted to know what was happening, but Rebecca advised caution. "We must keep out of sight," she whispered. "If they see you, they'll laugh us to scorn." Rebecca did not add that if the British captured them, who knew what their fate would be? Finally, they chanced to look. There was a signal flag flying from the warship's mast. Retreat was the order. The British captain had good ears, and he had heard the music too. Abby was excited and began to speak. "Don't make a noise," said Rebecca. "You make me laugh, and I can't pucker my mouth." Now the men in the boat saw their flag as well, and their oars slapped the water. It was one thing to bully a little town. It was another to fight a pitched battle. They turned about so quickly that one Marine fell overboard and he had to be hauled back in. Rebecca and Abby could hardly believe it. The fight was over and nary a shot had been fired. They had quite a story to tell when their family returned. The war went on for a few more months, but the British never troubled the town again. The Sisters of Scituate Light had seen to that.